You want us to do what? General SCA's mandibles clicked in disbelief, his multifaceted eyes darting between the other alien leaders. The holographic screen flickered, showing an image of a sturdy, two-legged creature clad in what looked like primitive battle gear. Its fleshy face was twisted into what the anthropologists insisted was a smile, an expression they claimed was not hostile but rather one of amusement. Though, with these Deathworlders, who could ever be certain? I said. The human spoke again, this time slowly, as if addressing a particularly slow-witted Arv. We want you to meet us on the battlefield, hand-to-hand combat. Or, whatever works when one side has tentacles and the other has hands. It wiggled its 5-digit appendages in emphasis. General Voka leaned forward, her tentacles twitching nervously. Why would we agree to that? Our armies vastly outnumber yours. We control the orbit of your planet. Our technology is centuries more advanced. What possible gain could you hope to achieve from such primitive combat? The human's grin widened, revealing unsettlingly sharp teeth. Gain? Who said anything about gain? We just think it would be fun. A wave of unease swept through the assembled alien commanders. Fun. There was that word again, the one that had perplexed xenoscholars for decades. That irrational, unpredictable force that seemed to drive humans to act in ways that were often dangerous, counterproductive, and sometimes disturbingly brilliant. Besides, the human added, seemingly oblivious to, or perhaps enjoying, the discomfort it caused. You've been lecturing us about honor and warrior traditions since the start of this whole mess. Well, here's your chance. Unless, the creature's eyes narrowed, in a way the commanders had come to recognize as a direct challenge. Unless you're afraid. General Zekthar's carapace flushed a vibrant orange, a sign of his growing indignation. We are the galactic hegemony. We have conquered countless worlds. Fear is beneath us. Great, the human interrupted, clapping its hands loudly, causing several of the more sensitive aliens to flinch. Then it's settled. We'll face off on the plains of Epsilon Eidani 4 in, let's say, 3 cycles. Bring your best fighters, your most impressive weapons, and maybe a snack or two. It's going to be quite the spectacle. The hologram blinked out, leaving the alien leaders in stunned silence. Finally, Supreme Commander Sixtal broke the stillness, his usually composed expression twisted in confusion. Did we just agree to that? Vela's tentacles writhed in agitation. It appears we did, but they can't be serious. It must be some kind of ploy or a delay tactic. Possibly, Zdar muttered, his mandibles clicking as he thought through the situation. But can we afford to ignore it? The damage to morale if word spreads. Not to mention, General Kazes added, his crystalline form flickering with unease. We know far too little about how humans actually fight in direct combat. Our intelligence suggests that humans evolved on a planet with nearly double the gravitational force of the galactic standard. Who knows what kind of tricks they might have up their sleeve? A ripple of discomfort passed through the gathered commanders. The reports had been read by all of them. Humans had earned their classification as Deathworlders for a reason. Their homeworld was nothing short of a nightmare by galactic standards. Overrun with lethal predators, plagued by natural disasters, and beset with environmental hazards that would have wiped out most species. Yet, not only had humans survived, they had flourished. They clawed their way to the top of the food chain, built vast empires, and, as if one death world wasn't enough, began colonizing others. We cannot retreat now, Sixtal finally said, his voice brooking no dissent. The political consequences would be catastrophic. We'll accept their challenge, but it will be on our terms. Equip our most advanced combat drones, deploy our finest powered armor. These primitive apes will learn the full extent of the hegemony's strength. A chorus of agreement filled the room, but Zdar still couldn't shake the sense that something was being overlooked. The human had exuded an unsettling confidence, as though it possessed knowledge they did not. But what could a barely spacefaring race possibly know that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations didn't? 3 cycles later, the galactic hegemony's forces stood in perfect formation on the windswept plains of Epsilon Eidani 4. Thousands of combat drones hovered in neat rows, their energy cannons thrumming with anticipation. Hundreds of elite soldiers, encased in shining powered armor, formed an imposing wall of military might. Each suit of armor was a masterpiece of technology, capable of leveling entire cities with ease. Across the field, the human contingent, a mere few hundred, stood in stark contrast. Some wore what appeared to be ceremonial armor, fragile and outdated by any military standard. Others seemed to be in casual clothing, wielding an assortment of melee weapons that belonged more in a museum than on a battlefield. Acer, one of Zekthar's junior officers, clicked his mandibles nervously. Are we certain this isn't some kind of farce? The general's tone was curt. If it is, it's a poorly executed one. Stay alert. Humans are notorious for their erratic tactics. As if summoned by those words, a single figure emerged from the human ranks. It was the same individual from the earlier communication, wearing that unnervingly wide smile. In one hand, it held a long metal tube with a curved handle, likely a primitive projectile weapon according to their intelligence. Howdy, folks, the human's voice echoed across the battlefield, amplified by an unseen device. Glad you all could make it. Before we get started, just want to clarify the rules. Sixtal stepped forward, his towering frame gleaming in his ornate battle armor. Rules? There are no rules in war, human. The human grinned even wider, leaning on its strange weapon. No rules? Well then, you're in for one wild ride. Let's get this show started, shall we? There are no rules. The human's smile, impossibly, stretched even wider. But there are. You see, you lot love talking about your precious galactic conventions and such. So we thought, why not play by your rules just this once? That means no orbital strikes, no mass destruction weapons, and no calling for backup. Just good old-fashioned ground combat until one side surrenders or can't fight anymore. Fair enough? The alien commanders exchanged nervous looks. It was true, the conventions banned certain types of warfare, but they never really expected humans to follow them. Their carefully orchestrated plans were starting to fall apart. Agreed, Sixtal said reluctantly. But know this, human, your arrogance won't save you. We've brought the finest warriors and the most advanced tech in the galaxy. You don't stand a chance. The human simply shrugged, a gesture that always unsettled the aliens with its blatant disregard for the gravity of the situation. Maybe not. But hey, isn't that what makes it fun? If there are no further questions, the human raised a metallic tube into the air. Let's get this show on the road. With a loud bang, a small projectile shot into the sky, bursting into vibrant, colorful sparks. For a moment, nothing followed. The alien troops tensed, waiting for some hidden threat to appear. But the humans remained, grinning in that unnerving way. Then, from somewhere behind the human ranks, came a sound the aliens had not anticipated. Music. A pounding beat layered with screeching tones that xenomusicologists would later identify as guitars. As the rhythm intensified, the humans began to move, dancing, swaying, even singing along to words that made no sense to the alien ears. What is this madness? Voka's tentacles twitched in bewilderment. Is this some sort of pre-battle ceremony? Before anyone could answer, the human leader's voice rang out again. All right, Terran forces, you know the drill. Operation 4.0 is a go. Let's show these Xenos how we celebrate. With that, the human line sprang into action, but not in the organized advance the aliens had expected. No, this was something else entirely. Dozens of makeshift vehicles, hidden behind the human forces, roared to life, belching thick clouds of smoke. They were crude machines, pieced together from scrap, adorned with spikes, and painted in wild colors. At the center of the chaotic horde was the most bizarre sight of all, a mobile platform, cobbled together from seemingly random parts, upon which stood several humans with those guitar instruments. As the ramshackle convoy charged forward, the stage ignited with fire and sound, blasting out a discordant noise that the aliens could only guess was supposed to be music. What is this? Zekthar's mandibles clicked in frantic distress. This isn't war. This is witness me. A shout echoed from the human ranks as the first wave of vehicles crashed into the bewildered alien forces. What unfolded was a spectacle of such chaotic splendor that no language within the galactic hegemony could fully capture it. Humans, without a care for their own safety, launched themselves from one vehicle to another, whooping and hollering. They swung from chains, tossed bizarre weapons that erupted in clouds of multicolored powder, and unleashed a level of disorder no rational military mind would ever dream of permitting. The aliens, caught entirely off guard, could not withstand the madness. Their meticulously organized formations disintegrated before an attack that adhered to no discernible strategy. Drones plummeted from the skies, their programming unable to process the sheer absurdity of what was unfolding. Pilots in powered armor stumbled, trying in vain to track human targets that seemed to defy both physics and common sense. And through all the chaos, that relentless, deafening music persisted. Crank up the beat, the human leader's voice boomed above the cacophony. Remember, people, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Rayala, flailing her combat tentacles ineffectively at a cloud of shimmering confetti, felt her grip on sanity begin to slip. "This isn't warfare," she wailed. "This is a party," yelled a human, zooming overhead with the help of a crude rocket pack. "And everyone's invited." Hours blurred into a maelstrom of sound, color, and absolute confusion. The alien forces were not defeated by superior firepower or tactics, but by sheer, bewildering audacity. Just when they thought they had a grasp on the situation, the humans pulled yet another impossible stunt. There were the rodeo riders, humans who somehow managed to mount and control the larger alien combat drones, steering them directly into their own troops. Then there were the bungee bombers, diving from hovering vehicles to drop high-yield glitter bombs straight into the cockpits of armored units. And no one could forget the mosh pit maneuver, where a group of humans formed a chaotic, flailing whirl of limbs, using their erratic motion to deflect incoming fire and knock over any unfortunate enemy who ventured too close. By the time the twin suns of Epsilon Eridani began to sink below the horizon, the once mighty alien army was in tatters. Drones lay scattered across the battlefield, some still blasting pop music from hijacked sound systems. Power armor suits stood frozen in absurd poses, their pilots having clearly given up trying to comprehend the madness. And everywhere, the ground was coated in a thick layer of glitter, confetti, and neon substances, like a surreal mockery of snowfall. So, I think it's time we have a little chat about revising some of those trade agreements, don't you? Maybe tweak a few borders here and there. Nothing drastic, just minor adjustments to reflect our new understanding. The alien commanders exchanged uneasy glances, a silent consensus forming among them. They had arrived expecting to crush a primitive race under the weight of their superior technology and tactics. Instead, they found themselves humiliated by a group of laughing lunatics who had turned the battlefield into a circus. "We will need to consult with our superiors," Sixtal stammered, attempting to reclaim some dignity, despite the bright rainbow-colored handprint plastered across his face. Of course," the human agreed with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Take all the time you need. We'll just be over here tidying up and getting ready for the after-party. Oh, and feel free to join in when you're done making your calls. I've heard some of your species can really cut loose when they're in the mood." As the humans strolled away, whistling a jaunty tune, the alien commanders stood in silence, processing the horrifying new reality they now faced. They had come to conquer a primitive world. Instead, they had stumbled upon something far more dangerous, a species that treated war like a game and seemed to enjoy every moment of it. As the realization sank in, a shiver ran through the remaining commanders. They had come to teach these humans a lesson, but instead, it was they who had been schooled. It was a lesson they would not soon forget. And that, my dear ones, is how humanity earned its place in the galactic community. The old veteran chuckled, reclining in his hover chair. His audience of younglings, their eyes wide with wonder, stared at him in disbelief. "But, Grandpa," one brave child ventured, her antennae twitching in confusion, "that can't be true. Humans wouldn't really turn a battle into a party, would they?" The old alien's compound eyes sparkled with amusement. "Oh, but they did. I saw it with my own eyes. All four of them." Another child, his iridescent scales shimmering, raised a claw. "But why didn't the hegemony just blast them from orbit? Surely that would have worked." The veteran's expression grew serious. "Ah, that's the brilliance of it. The humans knew we could have done that, but they also knew we wouldn't." The younglings exchanged puzzled looks. "Think about it," the veteran continued. "If we'd resorted to orbital bombardment or called in reinforcements, we would have been admitting that a tiny group of so-called primitives had forced us to break the very rules of engagement we prided ourselves on. The political fallout would have been devastating." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a hushed whisper. "But more than that, the humans counted on our curiosity. Deep down, we wanted to see what they'd do next. How could we resist the temptation to witness their bizarre tactics up close?" The children sat in stunned silence, their young minds grappling with the tale. "And that, kids, is why you should never underestimate the humans," the veteran concluded, a twinkle of mischief in his eyes. "They're more dangerous than you'll ever realize, especially when they're having fun." A ripple of understanding passed through the younglings, their expressions shifting from confusion to awe. "So you see," the veteran continued, leaning back into his chair, "the battle was lost before it even started. The humans didn't need to defeat our military. They only needed to defeat our expectations." "But surely the hegemony didn't just give up after one battle?" another child asked, wide-eyed with disbelief. The old alien let out a raspy laugh. "Oh, I wish it were that simple. No, what followed were years of the strangest warfare the galaxy had ever seen. The humans, well, they took our bewilderment and ran with it." His gaze grew distant, lost in the memories. "There There was the Great Custard Offensive of 47. Somehow, they managed to fill an entire Hyman dreadnought with banana pudding while the crew was on leave. We're still scratching our heads over that one. The children giggled, their imaginations running wild with the absurd image. And then, of course, there was Operation Disco Inferno, the veteran said, gaining momentum. They hacked our comm systems and replaced all official transmissions with something called the BGS. For a full standard week, half our fleet was too busy dancing to realize they were under attack. Laughter filled the room as the children tried to picture such chaos. One of the older kids raised a tentacle. But Grandpa, if the humans were so good at whatever this was, why didn't they just conquer the hegemony? The veteran's face grew pensive. Ah, that's the kicker, isn't it? They probably could have, but conquest was never their goal. All they wanted was to be left in peace, to be treated as equals. They figured the best way to make that happen was to prove they were more trouble than they were worth to subjugate. He chuckled softly. It's like they had a saying, I'm not locked in here with you, you're locked in here with me. Took us a while to wrap our heads around that one, but once we did, well, let's just say things changed quickly. The old alien's gaze drifted toward the window, where the bustling cityscape of the galactic capital stretched as far as the eye could see. Humans and aliens of countless species mingled freely in the streets below, going about their lives in harmony. You kids are lucky, he mused. You're growing up in a galaxy where humans are just part of the everyday mix. But some of us remember a time when they were thought of as primitive savages, not worth a second glance. His mandibles clicked in amusement. Savages? Sure, they could be that, no doubt. But primitive? That was our mistake. We judged them by their technology, their ships, their weapons, and we missed the most important part, their minds, their creativity, their relentless determination to do the impossible just because someone said they couldn't. The veteran's gaze sharpened as he focused once again on his audience. That's the real lesson here. Kids, never underestimate anyone, especially not humans. They've got this saying, hold my beer and watch this. If you ever hear a human say those words, run. Just run. The children erupted into laughter, but before it could subside, a commotion near the door drew their attention. A group of humans entered the retirement home, carrying musical instruments and dressed in outrageous, sparkling outfits. The old veteran's eyes gleamed with excitement. Ah, speak of the devils. Looks like it's time for the weekly intergalactic disco inferno night. He began maneuvering his hover chair toward the door. Come on, kids, let me show you how we used to fight in my day. As the air filled with laughter and irresistibly catchy music, the children eagerly followed their grandfather into the joyful chaos. And if a few of them began to wonder whether they too could someday weaponize fun, well, that was just the human influence taking hold, wasn't it? Meanwhile, light years away in a highly classified briefing room deep within hegemony territory, a group of senior military officials sat in stunned silence. They had just finished reviewing the after-action reports from what was already being dubbed the Epsilon Eridani incident by the media. Grand Admiral Zagar, his carapace a sickly shade of green, was the first to break the silence. This can't be right. There must be some error in the data analysis. Fleet Intelligence Officer Nara shook her head, her bioluminescent patches flickering with stress. No mistake, sir. We've triple-checked everything. The footage has been verified by multiple independent sources. What you see is exactly what happened. A ripple of disbelief spread through the room. But it defies logic, General Visike rumbled, his crystalline form vibrating with unease. How could a species that's only just grasped faster than light travel manage to? He hesitated. They used music as a weapon. It's not rational. Nara finished for him, her tone serious. No, it's not. And that's exactly the point. All eyes turned toward her as she continued. Consider this, every strategy we've ever developed, every battle plan we've refined over millennia, is based on the assumption that our enemies will act predictably, in a logical and orderly fashion. Even the most aggressive species follow some kind of structure in warfare. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed humans riding what looked like a giant inflatable aquatic creature into battle. But the humans, they don't just bend the rules, they behave like the rules don't exist. Grand Admiral Zixtar's mandibles clicked in rapid succession, a clear sign of deep anxiety among his species. But surely this was a one-time anomaly? A desperate last-ditch effort? Nara shook her head. Unfortunately not, sir. We've been studying their historical records and, well, this kind of behavior is disturbingly common for them. She waved a tentacle at the display, pulling up a series series of images. Humans charging into battle with nothing but blue paint on their skin, humans using primitive projectile weapons to shoot down advanced aircraft, humans strapping themselves to rudimentary rockets and somehow surviving the experience. This is just who they are, she concluded, the evidence irrefutable. Their entire history is full of examples of what they call thinking outside the box. Nara explained, her tone measured. It's as though they have a compulsion to do things in the most complicated, dangerous, and, at times, brilliant ways possible. General V's crystalline form flickered in a way that suggested something close to fear. Are you saying they're all mad? Not exactly, Nara replied cautiously. At least not by their own standards, but by ours, by the standards of any rational, spacefaring civilization. Yes, they're completely unhinged. A heavy silence descended over the room as the gravity of her words sank in. Finally, it was a junior officer, barely out of the academy, who voiced the question on everyone's mind. So, what do we do? Grand Admiral Zixtar exhaled a long, weary sigh. That's the question, isn't it? We can't ignore them. They've made it clear they're too dangerous for that. But fighting them? Not in any way we're currently prepared for. He turned to Nara. What are your analysts recommending? Nara's bioluminescent patches pulsed rhythmically as she considered her response. Well, sir, based on our limited understanding of human psychology, we've identified two potential strategies. She activated the holographic display, showing images of humans and aliens participating in what appeared to be a sporting event, followed by another image of a multi-species team working together in a laboratory. Option 1. We attempt to channel their unconventional problem-solving skills into constructive pursuits. Joint scientific endeavors, cultural exchanges, things like that. With proper guidance, it's possible their creativity could be harnessed for the benefit of the entire galaxy. Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. It was a sensible, logical solution, exactly what the hegemony prided itself on. And option 2? General V pressed. Nara's glow dimmed slightly, a clear sign of unease. Option 2 is a bit unconventional, sir. More unconventional than weaponizing music, someone quipped from the back of the room. Ignoring the comment, Nara continued, we've observed that humans tend to respond positively to what they call reverse psychology. Essentially, telling them not to do something often results in them doing exactly that, but with even greater enthusiasm. She paused, taking a deep breath before delivering her next words. So, we propose formally telling the humans that they are absolutely forbidden from joining the galactic hegemony. That they are far too primitive and chaotic to even be considered for membership. For a moment, the room was engulfed in stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. That's insanity. They'll see right through it. Are you trying to get us conquered? Grand Admiral Zixtar raised all four of his arms, calling for calm. When the uproar had subsided, he fixed Nara with a piercing gaze. You really think this could work? Grand Admiral Zixtar asked, his tone skeptical but intrigued. The intelligence officer's bioluminescent patches flickered with confidence. Based on everything we've learned about human psychology, yes, sir, I do. They seem to have an almost compulsive need to prove others wrong. If we tell them they can't do something, they'll move mountains, figuratively and literally, to accomplish it, and in doing so, Zixtar mused, his mandibles clicking in a thoughtful rhythm, they'll transform themselves into the kind of civilization we'd welcome into the hegemony. His voice held a tinge of reluctant admiration. It's utterly insane, of course, but then again, so are they. Maybe it takes a bit of madness to understand madness. His gaze swept across the room, noting the mix of disbelief, apprehension, and cautious optimism on the faces or sensory organs of the assembled officers. Well, my esteemed colleagues, we find ourselves at a crossroads. Do we stick to our traditional methods and risk another, what did they call it? Ah, yes, a dance battle? Or do we fight fire with fire and out-crazy the crazies? As the debate grew more animated, Nara allowed herself a small, private smile. Whatever the decision, one thing was certain, the galaxy would never be the same again. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing after all. She watched as her fellow officers began passionately discussing the tactical merits of various human musical genres as potential weapons. The idea of strategizing around something as ridiculous as disco versus punk rock seemed laughable, and yet it felt oddly appropriate in light of what they'd learned. After all, a little chaos might be just what the galaxy needed. The future was about to get very interesting, she thought with a glint of amusement, and somewhere, on a small blue-green planet that had been the source of so much intergalactic chaos, a species of bold, brilliant, and unpredictable primates was likely already planning their next wild event. The hegemony, Nara decided, had better start stocking up on glitter. Something told her they were going to need a lot of it in the years ahead.